don't play stuff that sounds like B-boy music of 2023 or whatever, in the times when you don't have to. Have a diversity of sound. And that goes to the other point, which I said I was going to make, which is that requires that you dig. As a DJ, it requires that then you have to dig for your tracks and make sure that you have something interesting to show that isn't just the best breakdance music of 2023 that you got off YouTube. You have to figure out something else that's gonna, be cool for the breakers. So you have to dig, you have to find dope other tracks and play that stuff when you don't have the copyright constraint.
Very quickly, before we get into it all, just want to say a big thank you to Freestyle Session, who are bringing us today's show. We've got a special discount for all of our viewers here at Stance Elements. Go to freestylesession.com and use the code Stance Elements at checkout for 20% off your total order. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Because it seemed to have sort of come around like this hard line of like they went from, getting all sorts of other music there, and then all of a sudden it's lean rock, it's you, and it's others that are the only ones making the music and the only sounds that you would hear. So when you were talking about like how some of the music sounded in its early days, and you even said about your own as well, like, where is this resistance sort of coming from? Is it people's idea of thinking it's only classic hip hop and it's only funk, and if it doesn't sound like that, then we don't like it? Or is there something else there?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. To your question, I might ask another question to just get a little more clarity on it. But are you saying like, of the people that don't like it, or that are not a fan of the music, why is it that they're not a fan of it? Sort of, is that they only expect that they should have like this one sort of sound, not one, but like they should have only these like classic kind of renditions of music, or like the classic stylings of music, like a funk song from the 70s or a hip hop song from the 90s or something like that?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the comments that I've seen over the years when it comes to the music is usually, why are we playing this and not an old James Brown record or something else?
Right. So, and it's interesting too. So I have a lot of thoughts on things, which is, as you might imagine, being a DJ and in this position of having created some of it, but then also agreeing with some of those comments too. I'll be like, yeah, I would love to hear that. But then I also find that, and brace for it, this is where, remember when I told you before the interview that things could get spicy, things could get very spicy. But I find, and this is not a diss, but it's just a fact, that like most people, most B-boys and B-girls, and even the ones that claim to have sort of this knowledge or these opinions about music, actually know very little about music, like as a whole. They really do. And so sometimes I take some of it where it is true from my perspective as a breaker and as a DJ, and I'm like, yeah, like I would like to hear some of this. And then some of the times, even for those people that are like, in quote, knowledgeable, I'm just like, yeah, but you also have no idea what you're talking about. People would be like, oh, that sounds like techno. I'm like, dude, do you know that like techno music is from Detroit? It's black music from Detroit. And it's actually can be really cool. And I'm guarantee you like some of it. This sounds nothing like that. You're saying that as a, capture all for talking about music with a sound that you don't like. And so you don't like techno. So you're like, well, this sounds like techno or whatever. And it's like, you literally have no idea what you're talking about. And this is people that really know music. So this is why I like, no diss to those people, but like, or people will be like pots and pans. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean there's too much polyrhythm?
That's one thing I've heard a lot as well about the pots and pans.
Bro, what does that mean? Does that mean there's too much polyrhythm? Do they know what that means? Does it mean there's too many, the polyrhythm, the congas and the cowbell is making it too convoluted? What does that mean? Does that mean it's too fast? People will use these terms and like they have no idea what they actually mean. Like they really don't know about music. So I think one issue is that like you do like, so like to balance things, it's like, okay, sometimes you do have an issue with the music. You want it to be more organic, and I'm going to touch on that point in a second. And you want, certain sounds, and then also you want certain classic records, and I'll touch on that as well. The other side of it too, though, is that like people have these descriptions or pretend like they're somehow authorities on talking about what the music is, and have literally no idea about a lot of music, even very basic stuff. Again, like knowing what techno is, or knowing like, pots and pans. So I'm like, okay, cool, describe it. What is it you don't like? And no one is talking about, oh, this beat is too quantized, meaning there's no swing to it. Oh, this beat is using synths that sound bad. They don't sound like the real instruments. That's a fake horn on a VST. That's not someone playing a real horn. Oh, the drums on this are, I don't like the timbre of the snare. If someone starts talking to me about that, then I'll be like, yeah, you're right. I agree. And like those are the things that's how I would break it down for a lot of these. And so there was a lot of scrutiny to be put on a lot of the new breaks being created. But at that same time, you have a lot of these people that are complaining about it. They really have no idea what they're talking about to begin with. So it's like if they're complaining about it beginning from an area that is also in ignorance, I think it's a little bit funny to me, because I'm like, yeah, I get it that you have these complaints. You're not completely wrong, but you also don't have the full picture at all, like at all. So that's part of me that I think is funny. Part of this whole thing I think is funny. So now let's touch real quick on, like you said, they want to hear classic records. Okay. I did the Red Bull BC1 in 2018. I gave them a list of about 30 different songs that were classics that I was like, cool, this would be cool if I could put one of them in. They came back to me and they approved 3.
Only 3?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't give them 30. I probably gave them about 60. I probably gave them about 60 songs to see, can you get this clear? So like, I'm trying my best to be like, I want to include these classic records. I want to include a James Brown. I want to include some of this other stuff. When they came back, they were able to get 3. And I obviously
Without saying the songs, what were the artists that you were able to get cleared?
I got Hippie Skippy Moonstruck by the Moon People, that one, and there was like 2 other ones that got cleared. But yeah, so one, a classic kind of like funk joint, higher tempo B-boy, B-girl funk joint, and then another one that was another 2. One of them was like more a produced one, Sammy's Theme. That was one that I got, and there was one other one. Yeah, so but then when it came to like some of these big ones, like a James Brown or Yellow Sunshine or some of these other ones, like it's like, okay, well, these companies like a Red Bull doesn't want to spend $50,000 for the licensing fee to play one time a James Brown song. So that kind of gives the context of like what you're dealing with. It's like, why don't we hear this kind of song? It's like, okay, well, it's because of that reason. All right, so the next step of it is, you can't place most of these classic records because they're going to be way too expensive to clear. So the next step is like, okay, what about people making them? So as much as people complain about it, I don't usually hear almost anyone say like, oh, that's that, and they don't have to. I don't need the props myself. It's just funny that I never hear it or I've never seen it ever. And it's just like, oh, that's like that song Fleg produced. Like that's some of the only hip hop records with lyrics in it, like an actual hip hop record that is in the library of Red Bull. And that's kind of like the ones I produced were like the only ones in there. Why? Yeah. I'm proud of it, but I also think there should be more of it. But I'm like, why isn't there more, records like, songs with someone rapping on it? We love dancing to people, to songs with people rapping on it. Why aren't we making that more of it ourselves? You have a lot of these bland kind of whatever beats and these like made for B-boy beats. And it's just like, but the coolest dancers, some of the best dancers that I know, like the top guys in the world, look at their IG, look at what they dance to. And it's like they dance to jazzy stuff, they dance to stuff with lyrics in it, like, some funk stuff with lyrics in it, but a lot of hip hop with lyrics in it. So it's just like my solution personally, but I can only do so much as a single person. And also with the funding that I get, like my solution was, let's make some hip hop tracks for the Red Bull library so that they can be played and we have that representation in there. The other representation that I have, at least 3 tracks of, actually I think 4 now in the Red Bull library, is a full band that I produced. I mean, I wrote everything. Like I wrote all the lyrics, I composed everything, I played on it, I wrote all of like the melody line, horn line, everything.
You have to say the name Fleg. It's not enough just to say that you have a band, because it's the East Coast affair, okay. Right?
Yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah. So that is just like an incredible amount of work to do. But the reason is because you want to get an organic sound. So again, these are things I never hear in the descriptions when people talk about, oh, the music is bad. It's like, okay, why? And it's like, what is bad? Why do you like the old funk song and you don't like this? And it's just like, again, things like swing, things like people, actual humans playing is going to be a way different feel than, you know, programming it on a computer. And then the other thing is the organic sound. Actual horn players, like my good friend Sam Koff. I have to shout his name out because he's the homie from East Coast Affair, but he is a trumpet player and he helps me with all of the arrangements. He helps me with like a lot of some of the arrangements and just like writing the actual horn parts out so that other horn players can play it. And he's incredibly helpful for there. And you know, so I have to give him a shout for that. But the point is, we're recording live trumpet, saxophone together playing in a horn section. That sound is so much different than a fake like beep 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 beep, like, you know, little horn sound that you find on a computer library. It's never going to be able to replicate the attack, the decay, the way that a horn sounds, the timbre of it. It's not going to be able to replicate it, especially when you're dealing with like complex rhythms that the horn section is playing. So yeah, you know, like that was the idea, was like, let's make some of these tracks that are made in the same way that those other ones. If we can't play those other ones, let's make some in the way that those other ones were made so that we can replicate that sound. And again, I'll get a few people asking like, well, what's that song or whatever, but never someone's just like, wow, it's really cool that they don't even have to mention my name. I don't care about it. It's just like, I've never heard someone point it out that like, wow, it's cool that even with these Red Bull beats and these other good ones over here, that there are a few songs that are full funk songs that sound like 70s funk songs in there. Part of the thing is like, I think that like maybe a lot of dancers don't care. They don't notice. They're just looking for the big one beat to hit, you know, and that's another whole discussion to have. But the other thing is the ones that do care probably are out of the scene. The ones that don't care as much probably, you know, are the ones that are the top, some of the top battlers or some of the top viewers anyway, maybe not the top battlers, but the people viewing him. And, you know, I just don't get any comments about that. So it's like a lot of these people have this, you know, complain about it, but no one can describe it, number one. And then number two, when it is in there, it doesn't seem like it's even valued. So it's there's a weird thing going on in there where you say you value something and then like, I just don't, I've like in 4 years that the tracks have been out, you know, or more for a lot of them, at least 4 years now going on, 5. It's just like, I barely hear about them. I barely hear like, wow, what's that track? Oh, like that's cool that that's made or whatever. So it's just, I think there's a weird thing going on. This is why I started with what I started with, talking about the scene and music. Is like, I don't think people actually know what they're talking about. I don't know that they know what to listen for. And without, I'm not trying to be overly mean. I'm just putting it out there as it is, that like, this is where we're at. And if we want to progress, and if people want to really be serious about talking about the music and being into the music, like, let's up our vocabulary. Let's get like a little bit more, you know, educated on that. Because, you know, you look at someone like a Ken Swift. Kenny is always talking about the music. That's like the premier. That's like the innovator. That's that dude. You know what I mean? And it's just like, he's always talking about it. You even look at other people that are younger, you know, that have done a whole lot, like Menno. Always talking about, like, look at his IG, look at what he chooses to play and put in his clips, jazz, you know, lower tempo stuff, that kind of thing, you know, kind of like not even hip hop, but just like beat oriented stuff, but this really jazzy or mellow or has a cool whatever. And you can tell who really values it. And like I said, these top people in the scene currently, and the top people like ever, like a Kenny, those people really value it and they know all their records. Kenny digs for records. Kenny has all the 45s. He just put a post on Instagram of him, you know, looking through his records and stuff. And so it's just like, those best people are informed and they are educated about it. Everyone else following that, not so much. And I think that they follow all these people's leads. Okay, I'll get spicier here. They follow some of these people's leads by biting their moves, but they don't follow their lead when it comes to their choice in music. Boom. Cut that out. Replay it 5 times. Replay it 10 times. That's your only clip you need for this whole interview.
Well, it took us a while to get there, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, I had to give the context, you know, and I hope I'm not going on too much, like to the point where the listeners are like, yeah, well, you know, more so than just listeners like, oh, what's he going on about? But it's like, I want to give everyone the context of like, you know, kind of you're setting up here for like, where we were at, where we didn't have cleared music, and then the necessity came in, and then it's like where we are now, but then also with where we are now, what are the solutions? And then I feel like the more you have people from the scene asking for the right solutions, like, hey, let's get some more hip hop tracks with MCs on it. Hey, let's get some more like organic funk soul tracks in there. The more that that's asked for, then magically you're going to have the power to be able to go to Red Bull or go to some of these other people and be like, look, the people really want this stuff. They really are, you know, pining for some dope, you know, some good quality music. Can we get a budget to, not just for me, but for other people? Can we get some other budgets to hire this band, to do this thing, to get this good music included into the repertoire, you know, or into the library so these companies can use it, or so these broadcasters can use it? That's the ultimate goal of all of this. I'm not just trying to talk shit, but I will. But
that's fine. But let me hold that thought just there.
Yeah,
If we
go on.
round this off, like just in a nutshell, you were alluding to certain things that other DJs and other producers could maybe do to help move the needle forward in terms of the music that's made within our scene.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Oh, Jesus Christ, I forgot about that, right? Right, well, let's just end it on this, right? So, just in a nutshell, if you could just like round this off without going into like a whole lot of depth, if a lot of people don't know what they're talking about, right? What do we do? What should our sounds sound like? How should we be approaching it so that the music we hear at these large events, if we can't get the proper copyrighted music that everybody wants to hear, like all the James Browns and everybody, what do we do to have a more authentic sound at our events moving forward?
Okay, so there's a few things, and I'll try to keep it short. The first one that I think is super important, I mean, there's a couple first ones, but I'll say the first one, and it's going to include something else as well. The first one is, and I saw this recently at some competitions, is to separate the portion that is the copyright portion of the event. And what I mean by that is this: if you have this portion of the event that is copyright music, you know that you're gonna have limited choices. Okay, everyone's not gonna love it. You're gonna try to choose the best, and we'll talk about in a second, about what the, producing that music, etc. But you're gonna have this limited choice. Okay, push that aside. What about everything else in the jam? Even for the big competitions, like your prelims, what I personally don't want to hear, if I know that I'm going to have to hear all of this stuff for the, copyright section portion of the jam, if there's a part of the jam that I don't have to hear that, that we don't have to worry about that, why don't you not play anything that sounds like that? That's the first part. And I've seen this a lot, right? And it's just like, look, you have these certain constraints, that's fine. But then when you don't have the constraint, bro, and I'm talking to all the DJs now, play hip hop, play classic joints, play digs, play stuff that people don't know, play stuff that is hype, that is fun, that it doesn't sound anything like that other stuff. Because guess what? We're going to hear damn a lot of that stuff in a minute. You know what I mean? Like
We've
later
got
in that
unlimited
day,
choice.
Right. You have unlimited choice. Don't squander it playing stuff that sounds like the copyrighted music. Because I heard that, and I honestly, I won't say names or events, but it's just like I heard stuff that was awful. It was just god awful stuff. And then in my head, I was like, wait a minute, we're not even at the copyright portion. Why are you playing this stuff that sounds like, to be honest, the worst type of copyright-free music anyway? It's not even decent stuff, but you're playing the worst type, and you're playing it at a time when you could have just as easily been playing the James Brown. So that's the first thing, and that's for all the DJs. And like, as we start getting into this mode of, this becomes more normal that we're doing, these copyright events or events with copyright music, I think this point is really important. So again, let's snip this and make it, something that all the DJs hear. Don't play stuff that sounds like Bboy music of 2023 or whatever, in the times when you don't have to. Have a diversity of sound. And that goes to the other point, which I said I was going to make, which is that requires that you dig. As a DJ, it requires that then you have to dig for your tracks and make sure that you have something interesting to show that isn't just the best breakdance music of 2023 that you got off YouTube. You have to figure out something else that's gonna, you know, be cool for the breakers. So you have to dig, you have to find dope other tracks and play that stuff when you don't have the copyright constraint. All right, now to the copyright constraint. Choose, even within there is still the ability to choose with taste. You can choose, like I said, some of these tracks that are more organic sounding, maybe some with hip hop, some other stuff like that. Not even just mine, but other things too that exist like in that Red Bull library. Choose things from those libraries that aren't just the same type of song over and over and over again. So that's the second part, is have some taste, even when you're dealing with only being able to use songs from the libraries. Have some, like, think about it, not just like what's the hype or whatever, what's going to give the fullest picture of what we can present musically that exists in this library. That's the second part. Number three is we can all maybe play a part, or some of us anyway, in trying to produce some of this stuff. So that would be the other portion of it, which would be awesome. Produce some more stuff that's, you know, straight up hip hop. Produce some more stuff that's straight up funk. Hopefully for, you know, like a Red Bull or some other companies, like hire or license music from someone else that isn't just the in the scene producers. You know what I mean? So those are kind of that's the basic layout, you know, and that one's more complicated. But I guess the last thing I'll mention about that is like, okay, so if we're talking about, if we're talking mostly to our scene right now, it's like, so for those of you in the scene that are producers, it's like, all right, start trying to make a broader sound. It doesn't just sound like what's been done the past, you know, 10 years that like Lean Rock or myself have sort of helped to, you know, evolve this sort of sound. Again, we're okay with some of that music, but then some of it we're like, even if it's our own tracks, we're just done with it. Let's keep evolving it, but keep evolving it not in a way where it's like, hey, what's the best way that you can press all the buttons and do all this right? You know, it's like, what about, do you have some friends that are in a band? Learn about how to record a band, learn about how to do some of that stuff. Or you have a friend that's an MC, start putting MCs on tracks, you know, maybe not every track, but like at least some, and having that hip hop rap element in the music that we're playing. And the very last thing that I'll mention is that I hope this is a short enough roundup for you, but maybe not.
Oh no, we're doing a part 1, part 2, part 3, but anyway, carry on.
Okay, good. The last part is that I think the approach, and this is actually a big part, is like, so this is for like the newer break, and I keep putting that in quotes because you'll see why in a second. The newer producers of breaking music or b-boy music need to understand that this all comes from hip hop, and that's not just about the part that I was talking about with rapping. It's the approach to production. So the very easiest way that you make a hip hop beat is you have drums that you sampled from an old record, doon doon ga, whatever the rhythm is. You have drums from like a 70s record. That's usually where they had dope recordings of drums. And then you have a melodic element. And then melodic element you put on top of the drums. Boom. That's the easiest, or like a loop. That's the easiest, you know, version of a hip hop beat. I feel like a lot of people don't have that foundation. They're like, let me start making like a break music. Let me go into my, you know, production software like Fruity Loops or whatever, and then just pick the worst drums imaginable. The drums sound awful. Like the sound of the drums, the timbre, the way the drums sound is awful, and is not something that, you know, is acceptable in the hip hop world nor in the breaking world. And I feel like that approach, starting from there, is how they do such a bad job of making this music. And it's just like, you need to go back to the original way that this stuff is created. Drum break, an old one that is created well, that is recorded well, and a melodic element, and learn how to make hip hop beats. After making hip hop beats, then you can kind of graduate to a lot of some of these other beats that are being made. It's just sped up hip hop. It's just faster hip hop. So that's one of the biggest things I feel like, as far as the approach, that the approach needs to be fixed. Once the approach is fixed and people start understanding that, then the beats will sound a lot better. But if we're going off where we are now and people are just trying to replicate what I do or what someone else's do without that foundation that I just described, which is actually very simple, that is going to continue us on this road of having a lot of these beats that are not so great. So I feel like that's like the multi-part answer of what sort of needs to happen, you know, in order to progress the scene forward. from every angle. From what I was talking about, it was like, hey, Red Bull or whoever, please support, and fund more dope bands and things like that are making music for you. And then like, for the producers themselves, though, it's like, I'm also not one that is just gonna like say something bad and be like, there's no hope. It's like, no, just like get better at it, learn how to do, how to produce hip hop properly. And when you start to learn some of that, you're going to not only do better by yourself and make better beats on your own, you're going to help the entire scene.
What a wonderful way to round it off. Dude, you've shared so much knowledge and wisdom with us, man. Thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing to have you here, and I really hope to see you soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.